Hey everybody, welcome to 30 Ways to Happy Days. I am Alana Yvonne with Truly Great Life, and we are on way number 24, getting down to the wire. So way number 24 for a happier day is the character strength of curiosity. So before we jump in, if you haven't already taken a look or a listen to ways number 1 and 2, highly recommend you do that, because all of these ways stem from that kind of foundational information that's shared in those two. So please check those out. All right, here we are, character strength of curiosity. How curious are you about anything? Or put another way, what are you curious about? What interests you? What kind of sparks that curiosity to know more, to learn more, to find out, to dig a little deeper? Are you curious about just things related to yourself? Are you curious with, like, as I say, the blinders on? What's going on here and there's no room for anything else? Okay. Are you curious to explore what's going on within yourself? Can you open that a little bit? Are you curious about what's going on in the world around you? Are you curious about other people? Their thoughts, their experiences, what you might, learn from them? Are you curious about a certain topic, a certain subject, and then the topics within that subject? What is it that you are curious about? Curiosity is a really, really key character strength to getting into that sense of well-being and getting into that happy place we're talking about. Right? Think of how you define or how you're starting to define what a good life looks like for you. Or if that's too big, what's a good day for you? And if that's too big, what's a good couple minutes or a good hour? Okay? And through this lens of curiosity, what can you be curious about if you're having a really hard time in something personal, professional, whatever it is? How can you bring curiosity into the equation of how you look at what you're going through? Because again, the only way out is through. And these ways to happy days, these are tools, these are strengths, these are muscles we all have to help us get through them, right? If you're going down that ditch, if you're in that valley, if you're on your way up, if you're out and the sun is shining and you are climbing that mountain, in addition to your oxygen and your water and your food, these are all tools to keep in your pocket. Curiosity is a big one. So sometimes if things are getting really intense, you just have to narrow that scope of vision. You can have perspective, sure, we talked about perspective, but sometimes to get through that hour, just be curious, what is it going to be like to get through this hour? What is it going to be like to get to, the next baby step that's in front of me? Sometimes it's really helpful to have that longer term perspective and see the big picture, and that can help. And other times it's like getting through what's right in front of you and holding on to that glimmer of curiosity, hope, other things we've talked about. But curiosity, and there can be a playfulness there, depending on your personality, depending on if that resonates for you. Sometimes for me personally, when things get really rough, I'm able to get through it by being curious. I want to see how it ends, right? I want to see how that chapter ends. I want to see how that story ends. I want to see because I'm curious. And that ties in also to what we've talked about before, which is love of learning. All of these character strengths here. So what from the other ones we've talked about can you bring along with curiosity? I know I've kind of jumped right in here. Let's get to the definition. So curiosity, and I'm sure you have your own ideas of what it means to be curious or what curiosity is. We can describe curiosity as you are interested in learning many different things. You have a sense of, or a desire to explore, right? You like discovering new things. There's a quality of the novelty, which is interesting for you, okay? And you have no problem asking questions about why something is or how something works, or the history behind it or the story behind it. And I think that ties into not being afraid to look like, I don't want to say an idiot, right? But to look like you don't know what you're talking about, or to acknowledge that you don't know something. So if you or somebody you know, and this all ties to ego, we keep coming back to ego, right? But thinks they have all the answers, thinks they know the truth and everyone else is wrong, or whatever it is, right? Or if you're in a situation where there's an expert, right? Someone who has gone deeper or knows more about a certain topic, can you ask questions without feeling like there's a problem that you don't know about this? Can you bring curiosity to it as opposed to, I can't show that I don't know as much as them, or I can't show that I don't know anything about this at all. So this ties also to another way we talked about, which is humility, right? Knowing what you know, knowing what you don't know. Recognizing that other people have information, experiences, feelings, and wisdom that can be, when shared, you can benefit from it, right? So are you curious to know more? If you're listening to any of these recordings, you're using your muscle of curiosity, right? Because otherwise you wouldn't be listening to this. Anytime we're learning something new, or for many of you, I'm sure this is just a reminder of things that you already know intuitively, or you've studied, or you've experienced, or whatever it is. When we bring curiosity, we are, I think, bringing a quality that makes us also just really human. What is the opposite of being curious? What is the opposite of like being interested in a lot of things, being able to ask questions, being adventurous, wanting to like discover new things? It's like a closed mindset almost, right? Curiosity is one of those ingredients to help get to what there's a lot of talk about, having a growth mindset, being open-minded. When we're curious, it doesn't matter if we don't know or make a mistake or have a lot to learn, because the focus is not on showing how much you know. The focus is on discovering something new. The focus is on experience, learning. How does that feel for you? Are you uncomfortable not knowing something, right? Are you uncomfortable asking others or seeking out information? How important, how much of your identity is tied into being seen as an expert? How much of your identity is maybe the opposite? Are you overly humble? Are you overly deferring your own wisdom and your own knowledge to that of what you perceive as people who know better? So how can you bring curiosity into whatever it is, personally, family dynamic, friendship dynamic, work dynamic? How much curiosity do you experience in your life? It's also an emotion, right? I'm feeling curious about this. And then you also know when you're not feeling curious about something, like it just doesn't interest you. But I would suggest you just, before just writing something off as completely irrelevant to what matters to you or interesting, can you hold a little bit of space to explore, maybe there's something there, or if you can just take a more objective kind of stance on yourself and be curious about your reaction or your initial response. What is going on there that's my initial response, that there's nothing here for me to learn? What is being threatened, or what are the assumptions that I'm making that I'm not curious about that topic or that person? And I get it, like, we're all busy, we all have a million things going on, and we only have so much bandwidth, and we all have different stressors. So it could be for like our sanity's sake that there are certain things that you're just not going to go to because you don't have the bandwidth. All right? And that's totally legit. The only question is, are you aware that that's why it is? And are you doing something to help you with your bandwidth, or manage your stress, or take care of whatever that situation is? But generally speaking, how open are you? How open-minded are you? How curious are you about things that are not in your, what is the phrase, your wheelbarrow? Are you contracting, or are you expanding your knowledge? Are you contracting, or are you expanding your worldview? Are you contracting, or are you expanding your approach to things, your understanding of things? And again, you get to choose. You get to choose how and when and if you use any of these ways to happy days. Okay, so what you may want to know is just a little bit of the research is that curiosity is one of the top character strengths, okay, that is found to be associated with satisfaction in your life. So if life satisfaction is important to you, just know that curiosity is one of the character strengths really strongly associated with experiencing that. And that's because I think, and the research would back this up, when we're curious about stuff, we are learning, we are growing, we are alive. We are plants, we are trees, we are, organic beings growing. We are not meant to be stagnant. We're not, sharks, if they don't move, they die, right? Like, we are not meant to be still and not growing. We're not meant to be stuck, even when we get stuck, right? There, eventually we are drawn to find ways out of being stuck, whatever that is for you, about being stuck. So if you want to feel alive, if you want to feel, I would say even hopeful, right? Depending on whatever it is you've going on. If you want to feel connected to, again, that formula that we talked about in the beginning, more meaning, more positive emotions, more engagement with life, what the heck are you curious about? What do you want to learn more about? What do you want to try? What do you want to try? So, these are things to think about, right? The other thing the research has found is that curiosity is strongly associated with positive relationships, happiness, longevity, good health. All right, well, let's break that down a little bit. If you're curious to learn, let's say you need to get in shape, you want to get in shape, you want to move more, you want to have more positive, physical body experience with your health, what sport or activity, physical movement are you curious to learn or get better at? So just as an example, I don't play tennis, never played tennis. One of my kids is learning how to play tennis, and they wanted to teach me and try to get, balls over the net. So we went to the local public tennis court the other week and do I stink? Heck yeah. Does it matter? No. Was it fun? Absolutely. So you can see how that's one example, obviously not a very meaningful one necessarily, not an earth-shattering one, but if you're willing to make a fool of yourself, or if you're willing to look like a beginner, and this is, you might have heard the phrase, the beginner's mind. Can you come to things, people, experiences, topics, subjects with a beginner's mind? I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I'm not a baby, right? Been on this planet, thank God, quite a few decades now, but bringing that beginner's mind, bringing curiosity, and even if you're just not naturally I think there's, there might be a genetic component, some people are naturally more interested and open to new experiences, etc., and others might be no, I like it, what I know, there's comfort zone. But the point is, we're only a percentage of our biology. We're only a percentage, whatever that percentage is, of how we're, how we were born or how we were made. We are able to change and grow and expand. You can look up neuroplasticity. Things can shift. So if we know that curiosity is one of the ways to happy days and tied to longevity, good health, good relationships, all these things that are part of that formula for what we're trying to get here, right? Whatever your truly great life is, then how open are you? How ready and willing are you to look like a beginner? Okay? I'll just throw out another example here related to physical things. It took a little bit of convincing, but to his credit, my husband has gone with me to dance lessons. And no, it wasn't for our wedding. This is many years after. Dance lessons. Not something, he's naturally interested in, but he had a little bit of curiosity, right? In addition to wanting to do something fun and new with me. So it's not that he's all of a sudden going to go with me Strictly Ballroom, my favorite movie, and we're going to become ballroom dancers, but it's fun and he was open, and we were curious enough to try different dance, classes. So what is within your environment that you're a little bit curious about, a little bit open to, and can you expand that? And can you do it? And one of the greatest lessons I think we can learn, and especially to model for our kids if we have kids, or to teach them, but modeling it is the best way to teach it, is when you screw up, when you make a mistake, right? If you come in last place, whatever it is, the world doesn't fall apart. And for a kid to see that, if you're a teacher, for your students to see that, to own up to it, and that ties into humility, but if you're curious enough about the thing, then you are secondary to the learning of that thing. Your ego and you being the expert and you knowing what the heck you're talking about at all times, or coming across a certain way, is secondary to the learning. It's secondary to the point of being connected, knowing that there's still so much out there to learn. There's so much to be curious about. Can you get your own prejudices out of the way of whatever it is? If you are having a gut reaction to something that you're not interested in, and maybe it's totally valid because of your value structure, and that's great, but just to be mindful and aware of it. We don't want to be on automatic pilot. If you want to be on automatic pilot on some things, can you be curious about that as well? What's going on that you want to be on automatic pilot for some of those things? Okay. So 2 things also that the research shows about people who use curiosity. Again, interested in new ideas, new activities, new experiences. And then the other thing is there's this draw and desire to increase your own personal knowledge. So if you think you know everything there is to know and you're not interested in knowing anything more, then you could say that, you have that curiosity muscle, but it's not necessarily being used that much or as highly, right? So if you want to know more, and again, this isn't, I would just say intrinsically, right? For your own personal knowledge, not because it's not necessarily because it's going to promote you at work or help you get to a certain accomplishment or achievement. It could, but just knowledge for knowledge's sake, this ties into that love of learning, but just being curious because it's fun to learn something new. Another example is if you watch any of documentary films or shows, it's learning something new. So to exercise this and practice it, if it's a little rusty for you, what do you like? What do you enjoy? What brings a smile to your face? Okay, so if it's animals, maybe there's an animal documentary. Okay, maybe it is a book about someone who has rescued certain animals. I don't know. So between we have information overload, and it's easy to just want to shut it out because it's too much. But if you just focus on those things that light you up a little bit, tie it with enthusiasm, which we talked about, right? What lights you up, that will also feed what you're curious about. But again, try and be curious about other people who may have very different things that they're enthusiastic about, very different interests, etc. All right. So, curiosity, I hope you can see that this is a really, really good one for having a happier day. If you're having a lousy day, and you're I don't want to be curious about why I'm having a lousy day. It's too painful or it's too much. Okay, what's one thing you can be curious about? And again, bringing movement into it, bring music into it, bring nature into it, go outside for a walk. And you could even exercise curiosity by saying, okay, I'm going to go for a 3-minute walk outside of my house. That's it. And I'm curious how I will feel after 3 minutes of being in the sunshine. Or if it's raining or snowing. Just curious, how am I going to feel to have that wind on my face, to have that sensation of the sun or the rain or the wind on my arms? Who am I going to see? I'm curious who I'm going to see. I'm curious what the air smells like. I don't know. You can play with all your different senses and just be curious about how it changes your mood. Okay? And then you get to those 3 minutes and you can say, I'm curious what another 3 minutes will do, or let's say 20 minutes. You can play with this in any way. You can do it the opposite way. Okay, if you want to numb out in front of the TV for like 8 hours, you can mindfully say, I'm curious how I'm going to feel after 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Just bring a little awareness to it. Play with curiosity. You're exercising that muscle. And when we tie it to positive things that are connected to how we want to be when we're at our best, or what we want to feel at our best, right? What kind of goals or habits are you trying to, accomplish or start having, and how can you bring curiosity to it? So if you're training for a 5K, bring curiosity. I'm curious how much, how easy or how much easier it's going to get after week 1, week 2, week 3 of training, whatever it is. So again, how open are you? How open are the people around you? How open are the people that you work with, that you live with? And just look for those examples of curiosity at play. In the media, in the news, in your movies, okay? So this is curious. I'm curious what you think about this way to happy days and what I've shared here. Love to know. Very curious. Okay, so let me wrap it up with a quote. I don't have a song today. If you have a song, please do share. But here's a great quote. It also ties into love of learning, but you can see that those are related. But if you're curious, you're open to learning new things. You want to build up your personal knowledge base of whatever it is. Are you curious about cooking? Are you curious about food? Are you curious about travel? Are you curious about health? Are you curious about whatever? Not because someone told you that you should be curious about it. What are you really curious about? And again, that's paying attention to what you're enthusiastic about. Pay attention to what lights you up. If you're like, I'm not interested in anything, okay, that's fine. If you're having that moment, okay. But be open, please, to when you feel something that tickles your fancy or strikes your interest or wakes you up a little bit, lightens you up, right? What kind of things, there's stuff we can choose to numb ourselves, and there's stuff we can choose to awaken ourselves, to fulfill ourselves, to make us feel connected, alive, growing, learning. What are those things for you? Okay, here's a quote from the book, The Once and Future King by T.H. White. All right. The best thing for being sad, replied Merlin, beginning to puff and blow, is to learn something. That is the only thing that never fails. You may grow old and trembling in your anatomies. You may lie awake at night listening to the disorder of your veins. You may miss your only love. You may see the world about you devastated by evil lunatics, or know your honor trampled in the sewers of baser minds. There is only one thing for it then, to learn. Learn why the world wags and what wags it. That is the only thing which the mind can never exhaust, never alienate, never be tortured by, never fear or distrust, and never dream of regretting. Learning is the only thing for you. Look what a lot of things there are to learn. So, learning, being curious about things, using curiosity, wanting to understand better. All right, very powerful. I love it. And especially, especially with the the world being what it is, if you're getting older, all kinds of aches and pains and all that stuff, but there's still stuff to learn, always. So that is a great quote. And there was one more thing that I wanted to share, but I lost it. I'm curious what it is. I don't know. I got distracted by the quote. It's a good quote. Maybe I'll share it another way, another time. So that is it for curiosity. Think about what you are curious about. And, I got it. Here. Just one more thing about curiosity, and then I'll wrap it up. How can we be curious about other people? What are things we can actually do to communicate that we're curious about them, that we're interested in them? Okay? Because again, if relationships is one of those variables in the formula, right? If it's one of those things in the formula for happiness, for well-being, for flourishing, positive relationships. So one of those things, and we've talked at length, in the different ways about relationships and how we can make our relationships more positive. But one of them is to be curious about what other people think, and to be curious about what other people are going through, and to be curious about how people are doing. Not because you're kind of waiting for the pause in their speech, in their conversation, for you to insert yourself, but because you're genuinely curious. We could say that, like, when you're curious about someone, it's showing that you care in a way that the other person can see. So what is a way that you can show curiosity to people that you care about? Because again, none of us are mind readers, okay? So you can have an enthusiastic response to something that they tell you, as appropriate, obviously, but an engaged, enthusiastic response. Eye contact is a big one. It can be kind of annoying if you're talking to someone, or think of it when you've been speaking with someone and they're like, just out to lunch. Okay? Eye contact, enthusiastic response, and authentic, like genuine. We can all smell BS, right? We know when something is not authentic. We've got an inner radar for it. So are you being authentic in your, constructive response to someone? So to work on your curiosity for someone else, and even if you have to, you really want to get away from the conversation, but for whatever reason you're stuck in this conversation, maybe it's at work or whatever it is, a social thing, and it would be just rude to walk away. You can practice it, and you can find a way to be authentic in it. Bring yourself into it. Be curious about what you can respond to and what they're saying that will show that you're listening, that will show maybe that you understand. You'll be surprised. We surprise each other all the time. Most of us are pretty deep if given enough time and opportunity to connect with others, right? Who are you giving a chance to? Who are you maybe not giving a chance to? If you're not curious, why is that? How does it feel when you're on the receiving end of a conversation where someone is not, they're not interested, they're not curious? If they're biding their time, at a networking event, and then move on, okay? So enthusiastic response, authentic response, eye contact. Now, what's an example of a non-curious response in a conversation? The focus is on, yourself as opposed to the other person. You're avoiding the topic or the situation, or you just ignore what the person says altogether, right? Like someone shares something with you and they're like, well, I just, it's all about you. Well, I just went on this new trip to blah, 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 or I just got this new toy, la, la, like completely unrelated to what was shared. That would be kind of a non-helpful response to what the person is saying, a non-curious response. So think in your own life, personally, professionally, of a positive, curious response you had in a conversation recently, and then think of, hopefully it hasn't happened, but think of a time when you had a non-curious response to something you shared to with somebody, and then try to bring that awareness of how that feels in your next interactions with people. Bring a little curiosity, right? Now, we don't want to overuse it where it's like, because when you overuse it, it's like nosy, none of your business, okay? So we want to bring social intelligence in it. We want to read the room right. We want to be aware, okay? And I understand there's cultural aspects there where some things may be seen as totally appropriate and others, may see it as totally not appropriate and totally nosy. So navigate that per your situation, obviously. And then, that lack of curiosity is just like complete, it's palpable when someone is not interested or not curious. So where are you in that? What have you experienced? And how do you want to go for the rest of the day now that you're done with this recording? What can you be curious about for the rest of the day? Who can you be curious about for the rest of today? How can you communicate an interest in learning with somebody new or in a different way? And see what happens and be curious about what happens. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a wonderful, curiosity-filled, learning-filled day, and I'll see you on the next one.